From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
I want to welcome you all to this program on independent comics art and Mini-Comix. Dean Haspiel on the Small Press Expo. My name's Georgia Higley. I'm head of the newspaper section in the Serial and Government Publications Division. And the SPX collection, or Small Press Expo collection, comic book collection, is housed in the newspaper section of our division. So we're really pleased to have this chance not only to hear from a creator of some of that content, but also a collector that has generously donated his Mini-Comix collection to the library, and it's housed in our division. To my left, we have two tables of material that we have set up, and they include material from the Small Press Expo collection, which is, we've now entered actually our first anniversary of having an agreement with SPX to be able to acquire material. Generally, these are Mini-Comix and small press runs. And then we also have selections from the Dean Haspiel collection, which is the Mini-Comix that Dean has generously donated to the library. And then we have a small corner of mainstream comics that include issues, comic book issues where Dean did the artwork. So it's rather wide-ranging, but please make sure you take a look at it before you leave the program. Sort of the way we're going to do the program today is somewhat free-form, I think. Dean will first walk through a couple of items that he's created, and then there will be a discussion between Dean and Warren Bernard, who is the executive director of the SPX, and then we'll have some time for additional questions. All right. Let me introduce Dean, and then I will turn the program over to you. Dean's a native New Yorker, and he's probably rather well known for a number of things, but among the media, he's won an Emmy. He created the Eisner Award nominated Billy Dogma, and he also illustrated HBO's Bored to Death, which led to the Emmy Award. And he received a residency from the Corporation of Yaddo and teaches comic book storytelling. He has drawn and written many, and I mean many, if you go into the Grand Comic Book Database and you search his name, it's pages of items associated with him. But he's drawn and written many superhero and semi-autobiographical comics. He's done Spider-Man, Batman, X-Men, Godzilla, Mars Attacks, and to me, one of the more interesting items is his collaboration with Harvey Pekar. And there's some examples from American Splendor over on the table. But he's also collaborated with a number of other artists, such as Jonathan Ames, Inverna Lopez, and Jonathan Lethem. And he also curates and creates multimedia projects for TripCity.net. So we're very pleased that he's able to take time out after all of that activity to be able to speak to us today. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you very much. I hope I can live up to that now. I wanted to start the evening when I talked to Warren, the evening, geez, it's 12 o'clock in the day, the afternoon, I never assume anybody knows what I've done, so I would like to be able to share some of the stuff I've done. And what I'm going to show you folks, or read to you, are two different comics that I've written and drawn that, okay, let me step back a second. When I was 12 years old, I decided I was going to one day draw the Fantastic Four for the rest of my life. That's superhero comics, it's Marvel comics. That did not happen. But one of the reasons why that didn't happen was because I discovered American Splendor. I discovered alternative and underground comics in the 1980s, black and white comics that weren't colored, that weren't superheroic. And reading American Splendor and other comics like that, I realized comics can be about anything and everything, including your life. So that really inspired me. And then most of the comic conventions are Marvel and DC oriented, and Hollywood nowadays, and the blockbuster movies that come from our medium. But I discovered, I want to say, Small Press Expo in 1997. I think I got a phone call from a guy named Chris Orr, who was the executive director then, and he invited me. And I went to Small Press Expo, and I discovered these what I call diamonds in the rough. People were doing their Mini-Comix, which started my collection that I then later on donated to the Library of Congress. The reason why I'm bringing all this up is because what I'm about to read to you would never be published by Marvel or DC. I was lucky enough to do certain collaborations with Harvey Picard, Jonathan Ames, and Inverna Lopez through Vertigo, which is an imprint of DC Comics. But even they're no longer doing the kind of memoir-type comics. So Small Press Expo, Alternative Press Expo, MoCA, these other kind of shows that happen, they're kind of like on the fringes, but that, their Jack Kirby would be a Chris Ware or a Dan Clowes, who happen to be here as well. So I'm just wanting to get you folks acclimated to what I do so you can get a sense of what I do and maybe you have some questions about it. And all I ask is that if you see a sound effect, I'm going to be reading the story out. If you see a sound effect, could you as a group say the sound effect? And it's a little interactive. And if you're not sure when to do it, I'm going to kind of raise my hand. I'm going to wait for you, okay? All right, so I'm going to read this comic. And I think I can do it by just clicking this keyboard. If I can bring this over here. Okay, you folks ready? And you can see it well? All right. No, you brought too many. Beef with tomato. Two more. Huh? That's you guys. Sorry. You got to play the zombies too. Okay, quit hamming it up. A zombie apocalypse was the first thought that occupied my mind when the blackout happened. Chalk it up to reading too many Jack Kirby and Johnny Craig monster comic books and enjoying too many late-night Hammer horror movies. But once my brain settled, it was the post-traumatic stress disorder blues that kicked in. And the sobering reality check that normal people could wreak worse havoc than an uprising of the dead. I quickly surmised that during desperate times, one could negotiate friends and family, but a stranger in need would test the very nature and endurance of humanity. Ever since the tragic events of 9/11 and the ensuing war thereafter, everybody was walking on eggshells, waiting for the proverbial other shoe to drop. And I was reminded by mankind's innate behavior that we're trained to practice courtesy and taught good manners, but when push comes to shove, we're all teetering on the edge of slipping backwards into the savage resolve of our Neanderthal ancestors. And when the going gets rough, the rough gets primal, with a booster shot of raw adrenaline and anything your fists can make mulch with. Thus were the panic feelings prompted by the Northeast blackout of 2003, a massive, widespread outage affecting over 55 million people during the late afternoon of a mid-August day. Luckily, noxious fumes bellowing from the window broke my neurotic spell as I heard rants and raves crying a communal foul on the street below. My obnoxious neighbor, a wealthy architect protected by his gated carriage house, insisted on being the only resident to enjoy electricity, while the rest of us plugged our collective olfactory from the loud noise and rancid pollution his generator emitted. Thankfully, my fears of a cataclysmic zombie massacre were temporarily stifled with unanswered questions to a sudden blackout had an interim villain to point our fingers at. Despite the relief of an ad hoc bad guy, dusk was starting to settle, and candles and batteries were rapidly becoming scarce, albeit high-cost items. Who knew how long this blackout was going to last. Pots of spaghetti were cooked and consumed by my neighbors as we caught up with each other's lives and listened to my radio for status reports. Alas, it was the summer heat and a mass deluge of cranked-up air conditioning units that compromised the system and left us in the dark. For some reason, landlines were functioning, and an unexpected phone call from my ex-girlfriend interrupted the neighborly parley, and her tender voice caused me concern. I'll be there as soon as I can. She didn't sound scared, but I knew that if my ex-girlfriend called me, it meant something was awry. The near-blind bike ride prompted paranoia of getting attacked by thugs and looters before I could complete my serpentine trek between Carroll Gardens and Park Slope. The city had lost its omniscient hum, and the eerie quiet contrasted with the pitter-patter of vandal feet sparked thoughts of mortality as I pondered my premature demise. A girl's ass. How do you think you're going to die? A question I'd never fully considered until today. And my first and only answer was, a girl's ass. One day, I'm going to be riding my bike down Union, and a fly girl is going to be walking down the street, and her ass is going to be doing that thing where it moves side to side and up and down, bouncing between heaven and hell. And it's going to have a soundtrack, Planet Rock, by Africa Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force. And then it'll be over, just like that, and I'll be dead, crushed by a car I never saw coming. I told you Marvel Comics wouldn't be publishing this. Right? When I finally arrived to the far side of Park Slope, my ex-girlfriend was happy and drunk. Her neighbors had safely quarantined their brownstone utopia with mini campfire sites, and everyone had pulled out their secret stashes of hooch like a speakeasy-inspired block party. I was handed a glass of whiskey and encouraged to sing songs while people roasted marshmallows and shared their favorite New York stories. I thought about my personal history with the boroughs and pondered the perfect New York City day. There's the New York City that tourists visit, and then there's the New York City that natives partake in and keep on the down low. Like a Jackie Gleason Honeymooners rerun or an issue of the Fantastic Four that comes out every month since before you were born, there are places in the city you can always count on being there. Beef with tomato over white rice? With hot and sour soup and steamed dumplings. I've been coming here since I was an embryo in my mother's womb, eating the same dishes. Comfort food at its most base. WoHop is open 24 hours a day in New York City, where cops and robbers can eat next to each other in a hassle-free zone before breaking their embargo in the streets above this subterranean haven. For dessert, there are classic video games to be conquered across the street at the Chinatown Fair Video Arcade with a photo booth to record the whole affair. And what kept the arcade archaic for so many years was a live rooster that played tic-tac-toe via electric shock for 50 cents a game. However, eating in public wasn't always fun and games. When I was a teenager, Times Square presented a mortal challenge at a Chinese food buffet, where a drunken Greek mobster flew off the handle for no good reason. Bust your tray, Gamoto! Die, Gamoto! Scared that he was reaching for a gun to shoot my family, I dove towards the crazed man and pressed hard against his chest. My family rallied and brought the pain with the pride and roar of 1,000 mad lions. And when the proprietors called the police, it was confirmed that the Greek mobster was holding a pistol with intent to kill. That was the day I earned my third eye and learned to expect the unexpected in the Big Apple. On my 16th birthday, my father gifted me a visit to the Russian-Turkish bathhouse, where I learned to steep in hot steam and breathe in the soothing oils of eucalyptus. I encountered my first full body massage when a mute Polish woman scrubbed my very soul with Dead Sea salts, sending my mind to Venus and back. I've been broiling in the healing fires of that East Village inferno ever since. For 20th century nostalgia, there's no better place to visit than Coney Island. Home of the Wonder Wheel, Mermaid Parade, Freak Show, Polar Bear Club, the recently demolished Astroland replaced by Luna Park, and many other attractions, including the Cyclone, which continues to stand the test of time, and challenges one's capacity for fear, where at 55 miles per hour, you can witness the screws unhinging as the roller coaster rattles its wooden frame with every descending loop and turn. Matched only by the devastating body slams of the bumper car ride, where wit and stealth is the key to avoiding whiplash. It was smarter to skip the rides where a man stood by with a bucket and mop for rider vomit, and instead play skee-ball where winning tickets scored you a carnival prize. When I was a kid, my father would visit the local steam rooms while the rest of my family sunbathed and swam in the Atlantic Ocean. My brother and I would play pinball on the boardwalk and eat ice cream and French fries for lunch. My family would rendezvous at Nathan's hot dog stand at 5 o'clock on the dot, where they still serve chow mein on a bun, and we'd drive to Wohop for dinner. Our family avoided death twice one Saturday, when my father arrived 5 minutes late, missing a car that crashed into Nathan's and ripped a woman's leg clean off. Then we decided to leave Wohop when the line to get inside proved too long. That evening, a gang war erupted on the premises and people were murdered. Rise and shine, milk, no sugar, just how you like it. Steam rooms, cyclones, and beef with tomato. My love letter to New York City. Alas, things hadn't worked out for us. She still carried a torch for an old flame. Thanks for checking in on me. Be well. And even though the blackout was still in effect, I felt refreshed, renewed, ready. Thank you very much. And then the next, if you could help me, because it's missing. So that's more of the autobiographical stuff that I do on my own. That was for a series called Street Code that you can get online, and I'm hoping to get the rights to print it in print, so I can give you all a copy. And now this is a very different. Was it on?
Yeah.
This is a very different thing that I do. How do I put this in a nutshell? When I do autobiographical proper, I feel like that's reportage, okay? And you can only be a voyeur to my story, okay? So I created this avatar named Billy Dogma and his girlfriend Jane Legit, and I feel like by creating an avatar, I can get more to the emotional truths of who I am. So even though this didn't happen to me exactly, as you'll see and read, I feel this represents me even more than my proper autobiographical comics. So think about that a little bit. And I think this has sound effects as well, so please continue. Thank you. The last romantic anti-hero. The sad part was that nobody saw it coming. Atoms did not split and incinerate us. Oceans did not rise and swallow our cities whole. The sky did not fall. When the apocalypse happened, we were already living it. It wormed its way into our daily routine and transitioned into an epidemic of global narcissism where apathy and indifference held sway. What started as techno-social networking soon became a weaponized cyber disease that infected our culture, mass murdered our youth, and annihilated the promise of a better tomorrow. When we should have been back to back, battling the threat tooth and nail, we wound up face to face, catatonic, and handing over the keys. We no longer spoke with each other, we spoke at each other. We didn't know how to live together anymore, and we forgot how to care. It was up to those who knew life before we gave the Matrix permission to splice us together and expose the anemia of our communal delinquency. But what about me? But what about me? It was up to the chosen few to rally the future of mankind. The pulse that kept us alive and interesting came from the farmers, the builders, and the creative class, and their nearly futile desire to evolve and express. Alas, Trip City was the only place left on this scorched earth that brandished two titans, where one heart craved the other in order to exist. Their romance betrayed a spark of hope that love could save the world. Had we not been burned for saving Trip City's water tower from a wind-stoked wildfire, we wouldn't have to hunt and ration rare root relief in the blistering sun. The burdens we bear, baby cakes. Ah, the cool ooze of cosmic aloe. There's only enough for you, Sugar Snap. If you don't take care of yourself, how are you going to take care of me? Oh, Jane. The first time I saw you, it was like a death-defying car crash on my body, mind, and soul. Hi. I'd never known the debilitating power of pure, naked attraction. That's good. The blood that courses through our heart and veins makes us prickly with feelings, and I was resurrected. It was during my recovery from setting eyes on you that I figured out what happened. At first, I rejected you for fear of losing my independence. Catatonically smitten, I became obsessed with the idea of you, Jane, legit. But I hadn't let go of my last love. She was a girl with bee-sting lips, magnesium thighs, and a skeleton heart. I miss you. I'm mad at you. I can't believe you abandoned me. I wish we could have made it work. I never want to see you again. Our love was a 5-alarm bonfire that exploded white and fizzled black when it needed to be a blue glow that could yield to each other's virtues. I know she loved me and I loved her. We just couldn't love each other together. Hey, Jane. I busted the human barcode for price gauging trends again and pulled his plug. Now you can snag that hip sundress at its current market value fair and square. Break a leg at the Lunar Eclipse Dance Hall contest tonight. Aw, gee. Hey, Jane. I'm going to have to take a rain check on that $1 million meal and $1 billion movie. Me and the undercolor cop will be at our Mexican standoff agreeing to disagree. Oh, man. Hey, Jane. What say we knock sugar and give the loneliest photo booth in the world a reason to steal a kiss? Aw, shucks. And that's when I clean my slate to mate with fate and make Jane my dame. You're my blue glow, babe. You sparked the napalm in my apocalypse. You know, the moon has a dark side and we never get to see it because it's permanently turned away from Earth. With the hassles I've been through, I'm afraid there might be a dark side to my heart. You think too much. Let me light up your heart and see what we find. It's like Archie Comics, I know. You send me, Jane. Hey, how'd that get in there? I put it there. Until they learn how to make these things waterproof and stop sneaking them into our home and under our pillows, I'm going to continue destroying them one at a time. But what about me? But what about me? But what about me? But what about me? What about us? What in the world? Hell's half acre. A new storm is on the horizon. It's not enough just to make the love anymore. I can feel it in my gut. We have to make the new love, Jane. What's the new love? I'm not sure, but we have to find out, even if it means dying to make it. We did it. They're giving birth to a blueprint of a better tomorrow. I can't wait to see what they do. Hell's half acre. You can't do this, Billy and Jane. It's already begun, mercenary. It's against Mom and God and law. Hi. Hi. Anyway, think about that. All right. Thank you. And I guess I'd like to introduce XBX Executive Director Warren Bernard.
All right, great. Well, with me, we had
Yes.
discussed before, I started with comics. I had my tonsils out. The very first comic book I ever got was, I was in the hospital, my parents brought me a Superman comic, and that was my first exposure. So where did you start? Okay.
I think I mentioned before, I decided at age 12 that I was going to hopefully one day draw the Fantastic Four. So what it did is it made me unemployable, okay, otherwise, because I just knew my eye was on the prize. I can't remember the first comic that was given to me, whether it was through an operation. I also, too, had tonsils out. I probably read comic books. I can't remember, like, that epiphany moment. But I do know that at age 12, I decided what I was going to do. So we'll just use that as a marker, you know? And then at that point, listen, comics just got cool, all right, recently. I went to school when, I had to defend comics, or, girls would point fingers at you and laugh, and then you'd find another guy reading a comic book. My best friend, Mike Houston, because it was Houston and Haspiel, we got online. We would go register at school at the same time,
sure.
and I met him on his birthday, and his mother had bought him Avengers #3, which is a Stan Lee Jack Kirby comic, and I was a big FF fan, so. He's staying online. I see him reading a comic because he's kind of shy, and I guess it was a comfort thing. It's his birthday. His birthday would always land on the first day of school, which sucks, You don't want that to be your birthday. So his mom hooked him up with a really cool, thing. And then I'm standing behind him, and I kind of made some comment about how the Fantastic Four were better, Then I discover it's his birthday, all this stuff. And then we had this friendly rivalry, and he went on to become a criminal lawyer. But and I'm doing comics, yay. Who's the smarter one? But that's the day. I remember just feeling like comics kind of made you stronger, because if you really love something, we were called nerds at times, and I feel like what a nerd really is someone who really knows what they love very well. It's a passionate kind of flag to wave is to be a nerd. Meanwhile, nerds in the movies were like the geeks and the dorks, with the tape on the glasses and stuff. And I wasn't that, but somehow I was still a nerd because I loved comic books and talked about it and read it in public, Now we actually have a day, read comics in public day, kind of stuff. So it's been a very odd transition to see comics being, hailed in the New Yorker and the New York Times, these grand institutions. To have my Mini-Comic collection in this institution is surreal, But like I said before with SPX, I've always wanted to do mainstream comics, and some of that's in my work. I don't know if you can recognize that. Obviously, I love superheroes, and I still show that a little bit. But what SPX encouraged was the personal stories, and to kind of self-produce these things. Because if, you didn't need the nod of an editor or a publisher to say, oh, you're good, we'll let you draw and write comics. This was a self-motivated thing. There are people tonight, Friday night, the shows tomorrow and Sunday, that are going to be folding and stapling their comics to sell tomorrow, or to hand out and trade with their friends. It's become tradition in a way. Like, what about you? Like, when did you first discover SPX and
Oh my God, it was, I guess, the mid-90s. I went to my first one.
Mm-hmm. I think it started in, I want to say 95.
95, yeah, but I was in the corporate world, so I wasn't around for a bunch of them, but then starting in 99 or 2000,
right.
And then I started volunteering behind one of the registration booths, and then I did the press releases, and
right.
Now, well, I guess they kind of sucked me in like Godfather 3.
Yeah, they won't let me out.
Now, and on your thing now, we talked a little bit about this also. How do you see the mini-comics world having changed over, let's say, the last decade, or has it changed?
It has changed a lot. I want to say, without being too critical at times, all right, so how do I put this? When the mini-comics of the mid to late 90s and early 2000s, I feel like it was more a case of taking a 8.5 by 11 piece of typewriter paper, Xeroxing, whatever, and folding it in half and stapling it, and it was more story-oriented. Now, we still have stories, obviously, because the form is a narrative form, but I feel like it's gotten way too sexy. And what I mean by that is we have cooler paper, we have, like, silkscreen prints. I mean, it's really become an art boutique form kind of thing, where I feel like, again, I come from the narrative, I like a story, and sometimes I'll buy something that's like $10, and there's nary a story in it, but it's the most beautiful object I've ever held. So I feel like it's gotten prettier, you know, sometimes forfeiting story for a certain type of look. And I don't know what that's about, you know, but that's what I've confronted, you know, it seems. And I feel like a lot of the mini comics I donated are more narrative based and a little more simplified, you know, in their construction, you know.
Right.
And then the other side of that is, it's not that it's a poaching ground, but I feel like, you know, a lot of publishers will come to a Small Press Expo and discover the next great new talent. And a lot of the comics that I donated are now in graphic novel form, or that was the starting gate, you know, like the beta version that then became kind of like this beautifully award-winning story later on.
It's almost like AAA baseball.
Yeah, in a way, you know.
It's almost like AAA baseball.
Totally. Yeah.
So now, you know, one of the questions that I want to ask you is you know, we've seen a vast difference in printing technologies.
Yeah.
We've seen a vast difference in the ability of people to do layout and design on
Yes.
their own. You know, all of these things that one time either you had to hand do them and cut them
I
out.
would cut out, you know, I would
Right.
Xerox or the original art and then reduce it and cut it out. And this is before Photoshop, or before I had Photoshop, okay? Now you have what's in design. I mean, these are all, you can be desktop publishers now, you
Right,
know?
right.
I still am confounded by the fact that there are people, like I said, tonight will be stapling and folding. Like, they know when SPX is every year,
Yeah,
and they
right.
still manage to be like tearing their hair out, like, I gotta do my I can't hang out tonight, guys. I'm like, you knew, they'll tell you on Sunday when the next SPX is.
Yeah.
You will know. You have a whole year to figure
Yeah,
this out.
yeah.
But I think it's part of the tradition, you know?
Yeah. Now, having been to your apartment, I went to his apartment to pick up the Mini-Comix, okay? And it's a small Brooklyn apartment, and all the walls were filled with books with various kinds of comics in it, and then there were boxes, and then there were closets, and then there were, you know, all of these things. So, how do you collect? I mean, what, you know, so you know, what is it, you know, do you have any domains or boundaries? Or
I
what?
used to.
Oh.
You know, Batman, you know, in order.
Right.
You know, 8-Ball, you know, or Love and Rockets, whatever, in order. Then it got to the point where, like, I go to the comic shop, and there's so many cool things. I get my stack, and then they go on to the stack. And then the next week goes on top. And I might read this one night, you know, and then that goes into another pile because I've lost wall space, and it's gotten insane. And I think that's part of the reason why, in talking to you, I was like, all right, there's these awesome mini comics. They can't become kindling. I refuse to burn these things or throw them in the garbage or whatever, you know. So that's when I talked to you about, you know, maybe donating, and I think it was your idea to bring it here, I believe. So how did that happen, actually? Because this is the first official, or no, you've been donating a collection.
It started. Actually, the process started in 2010 when I talked with Sarah from Princeton Photographs and Georgia from Serials about, you know, we've got this supply of every year. These people come and display all these things. The other side of that is when they come, some of these things disappear literally at the show. So there was this true ephemeral quality to all of these. I've contacted a bunch of different cartoonists. Lily Correa is coming, okay? And Lily Correa has
I was
a
just
book
at Yaddo with her, actually.
Yeah. And so she, 4 or 5 years ago, I got her Mini-Comix and love to get, you know, I've got them, but I'd love to get them here, and they don't exist, okay? Never to be reprinted. They're out, okay? So there was this ephemeral thing going on, and there was a need here, and then I had a supply, all right? And the trick is how to meld all of that together into an arrangement that, one, an institution like the Library of Congress can go ahead and accommodate, and two, something that can be built on and will help all of the parties, okay? So there's a certain amount of one of the things I pitch is that if you donate, you know, if we want you to donate, your books will be immortal, or until the sun goes supernova, depending on, you know, which thing happens. But, you know, so there was this, and also there was this lack of real institutional recognition of the indie comics field. Most of the institutions recognize some single panel cartoons, political cartoons, comic books, and comic strips.
Right.
Okay, but the indie comics world is D, none of the above.
Yeah.
All right. So there was this other thing that was screaming out in terms of recognition. And so I worked with Sarah and I worked with Georgia, and we came up with a process that actually is unique in the library, in that normally when the library collects, some collector has got something and they come along and they go, I want to donate, okay? But as opposed to being a passive collection, this is an active collection. Like tomorrow, myself and Rob Clow from TCJ.com and Megan and Georgia from the Serials Division and Sarah and Martha from the Prints and Photographs Division are going to descend upon the exhibitors at SPX and say, look, you know, we think this is significant, and can you please go ahead and consider donating to us, because we would like to be sure that this doesn't get lost to history. Another impetus behind this was I was talking to some of my political cartoonist friends from the independent world. So this is Jen Sorensen and Tom Tomorrow and some of these other people that get published in the alt weeklies, and that's a dying venue for cartoonists. And I said to them, and this started about 3 or 4 years ago, another impetus behind it was, you know, have you ever considered donating your stuff, Library of Congress or anywhere, because when they come and do the history of the Bush administration and the Iraq War, your voice will not be heard. And so there was this other thing that was going on from a different cartooning venue, that there was a certain amount of perspective on history that was also being lost. So anyway, it all got worked out. It took literally about a year, because it was difficult for all of us to kind of formulate exactly how we wanted this whole thing to work. And now we've got it. That I don't know about you, but I think that we've got something pretty cool, and it is unique within the Library of Congress, because like I said, we're collecting as we go along, all right, which is really different than after the fact going back, oh, you know what, we really need that. Now there's one area in which we are doing that. One of the parts of the collection is all of the people who are nominated for Ignatz Awards. We're going to go back and get all of their material to the best of our ability. So that's the only thing that we're doing sort of in retrospect. And there's also 2 components to this. One of them is the Mini-Comix side. The other part is, for the Prints and Photographs Division, posters, and we are getting original art from people. So, knowing the Prints and Photographs collection, a lot of their collection really stops in the 1990s. And so this was an opportunity to go ahead and get some of this newer material into the collections. So there were all of these different dynamics that were going on, that there was the need of the institution to go ahead and be able to do these things. There was a need for recognition on the part of independent comics. And then there was the, oh my God, I can't believe you really want to put this in the Library of Congress aspect.
Yeah.
I went up to this one guy last year. He must have been all of 25. And he creates these really cute little things about monsters. They're about this big, and he packages them up real nice. It's all hand done, like what Dean was saying, but it was...
You can see them
Oh, they're over there.
Sweet.
Okay, so they're actually there. So I went over to his table. I go, look, I've got some of my collection. This is great stuff. Can you please, can I please get, a copy of each one for the Library of Congress? And he damn near fell off his chair. Okay, his head exploded. Okay, he was like, really? Okay, and so there.
Warren's a murderer. Okay? So you know.
There was this genuine joy, So for all of us, I know that you guys have experienced that also. That you go to these people and says, look, we want this to be reserved for history, and these people just they're getting their heads wrapped around it is fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
it
it's
really is.
fantastic, and part of coming to SPX this year is not only to acknowledge what you started here, okay, or we have started by donating and being in the Library of Congress, but I've been working in where I get in advance and I can draw a comic, and I've done a bunch of graphic novels, and I've worked for Marvel and DC actually since, and I do a lot of indie stuff, but I haven't really in years self-published, which is what I think you're trying to recognize here, is the independent scene, is the DIY culture, is the self-published, person that doesn't necessarily have a publisher, and they're doing this because they have to. They are the publisher. Right. With that in mind, I'm going to be donating what I just read here to Library of Congress, which is something I self-published, putting my money where my mouth is, to be able to try to sell this as a print edition. We know we're living in this digital world right now, folks, which is why it's also amazing that we have this institution, because I don't know how you're going to navigate that at some point. Do you have a digital archive? I don't know. That's another conversation.
They do as a matter of fact.
I'm sure.
Well,
it's called the internet. No.
Well, no, actually, you raised a good point. One of the things I did forget is we, for the best webcomic for the Ignatz Awards, we go back and we basically crawl the site and archive the site.
Oh, interesting.
So that it doesn't get lost. So yes, we do that.
Right. So anyway, I want to donate that and then a copy of Trip City, which does have comics and prose in it as well, to the library while I'm here.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank
On
you.
behalf of us.
On behalf of exactly,
Thank
you know.
All right, this is great.
And
More stuff.
yeah, and you know, I don't know. I feel like the Small Press Expo is a place to go check out what's not necessarily being hyped and sold to us. You know, you really do have to go and, you know, look at the diamonds in the rough, or, you know, or meet and greet the artist. You know, I love that aspect of the show. You know.
Yeah, it's one of those places that, and then you discover these people. I think Lily Carre is a great example. Well, I met her 5 or 6 years. Let me see, 2006, within 6 years ago, and she had these little mini comics, and they were great. Well, you know, now she's doing work for the New York Times, and she's got graphic novels coming out from Fantagraphics. Okay,
And
so
I believe that I'm not 100% sure, but the book that's coming out this weekend from Fantagraphics,
Yeah.
might be a collection of those mini comics that you couldn't
well,
find.
it is. Yeah, it is a collection of mini comics, but
Which you get to see the process happen. You know, from 1 year it turns to 3 years later is a beautiful bound book. You know, for the stuff, and in a way, I think these are limited editions.
Well,
you know,
and that's the other thing about this. All of these editions of 20, 50,
Sure.
100, 200. Okay,
Yeah.
when we went through his collection, Jeff Smith, who does Bone, now, you know, he's big. Oh, they're over there also. This is great. Well, we discovered, and we didn't know this. None of the people who looked at this knew this. He did 2 mini comics during the Bush administration,
Yeah.
in a limited edition of 200 that were his political cartoons about what was going on.
Yeah.
Had no idea that he did any of that kind of work. All right, and this is the only institution that's got it.
yeah, yeah.
All right, so there's stuff like that we're looking to go ahead and preserve. So anybody who's out there, we'll take your mini comics. Okay?
Yeah. Anybody here have mini comics or make mini comics or going to Small Press Expo? Or, oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
All right. I expect to
Fantastic.
see them.
How are we doing time-wise? I just want to. Oh, okay. So we should.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, that's right.
Do we represent ourselves pretty well here? Okay, you understand everything?
Or
Okay,
are you
good.
asleep? Or?
We have a question from Hannah.
Yes.
Just, Dean has made this wonderful mini donation. Is he going to be able to continue to add to that donation over time, or is it a one-time donation?
Well, because we now have this group, and I am going after other collections. Okay, so Dean, you know, he's basically the first one through. No, that is not part of, it is not our intention to go ahead and I don't want to put the word burden on it, but to go ahead and basically have them commit to such a thing. Okay.
I was encouraged to burn the new mini comics right here for heat.
Now, of course, you know, you fast forward 5 or 6 years, and you know, they may come back and go, look, Warren, you know, I've got another 4 boxes of this thing that I've gone ahead and got, and I need to. I don't have room in my apartment anymore, and we're not going to turn them down. But there's no explicit or implicit agreement that says that, oh, we get this now, and therefore you're going to continue for us. That's not the way it works. Okay, we get that collection. All right, and you know, if they want to give more later, all right, but that's it. The box is very well bound. Okay, in fact, it was like 8 boxes of stuff was his. Okay.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. And that was also what's really cool is like Warren was driving and I guess coming to New York City.
Yeah.
And he personally came to my house and we brought them downstairs so they could come here, you know.
We
And
went out for lunch, had a nice talk.
Took
and
me out
stuff
to
like
lunch,
that. Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
So I have the SPX credit card now, so I can.
we talked about SPX so we could get the lunch, you
and-
know.
Yeah. Well, no. You got to understand. See, I'm an advantage. Being both executive director and chairman of the board by the powers vested in me by me.
That's pretty good. That's pretty all right, you know.
So, any other questions?
I had a question
Yes.
for Dean.
Yes.
Because you are in a certain way kind of celebrating the everyday,
Mm-hmm.
how do you select what to celebrate? Because
In terms of my work,
yeah, your
You know,
creative selection.
when I create and draw, you mean? Okay, that's a pretty good question because traditionally in autobiographical, or what I like to say is semi-autobiographical, because the minute you include another human being, we both have 2 versions of the same story, you know? So I think I'm right, but I could be wrong. Anyway, I like to entertain. I think it's important to entertain. And I think there's been a tradition in autobiographical comics to do a lot of navel gazing and whining and why don't I have a girlfriend and that kind of stuff. So I try to avoid that because that already exists. So luckily, being a New Yorker, and the minute I walk out the door, often something bizarre happens. I don't know why. I'm a magnet for it. I have a lot of stories, you know. So my intent is to, if I'm going to sit down and draw this and be lonely at my art table for many hours, you know, like a lot of cartoonists are, I at least want to be imparting some kind of fun or entertainment or, you know, something about life or something that means something. So I think about that stuff. I went to college for art, but I transitioned into film because it taught me more, it gave me more narrative tools to think about, you know, how to show and tell a story. So that stuff is important to me. So, you know, maybe that's the commercial side or whatever, and I massage both the indie, you know, I have, my feet are in both ponds, you know, of being kind of artsy-fartsy and indie, and then like, please, can I get like a blockbuster movie starring Tom Cruise, you know, like, so I don't know, that kind of is what I think about it, you know. So.
Anybody else? No? Dean, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, man, seriously.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.